The first clue did not scream. It sat in quiet plastic, tucked inside a ceiling light, above a spotless living room that looked like a magazine page. Detectives stood still, listening to their own breath, while dust floated through a narrow sunbeam. One officer reached up, unscrewed the cover, and slid out a stack of videotapes. On each label was nothing, no title, no date, just silence. The couple who lived here looked like a picture-perfect pair, Bernardo and Karla Homolka. Neighbors called them Ken and Barbie. But the officers knew something was wrong. The tapes felt heavy, like they could change everything. The lead detective held one close, as if it might burn his hand. What were they about to see, and how could such a pretty life hide something so dark? To understand that moment, we must go back to the beginning. Paul met Karla in a bright hotel restaurant, the kind with clean napkins and soft music. He was charming. He had a tidy smile, a warm laugh, and a way of making people feel seen. Karla was young, cheerful, and eager to be loved. From the outside, they looked like a perfect match. They walked hand in hand, shared fries, and took photos in good lighting. Friends joked they looked like dolls in a box. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect outfits. But under the shine, small cracks showed. Paul liked control, how plans were made, where they went, what people agreed to. Karla liked to please. She ignored the knots in her stomach because he said, "Trust me." At first, life felt busy in normal ways. School, jobs, chores. They decorated a small place with white curtains and a soft couch. They waved to neighbors. They smiled for pictures. That was a low, quiet time, the time that passes like easy weather. Then Paul's moods grew colder. He drove long at night, circling quiet streets near Toronto. He knew where the bus stops were, where lights were broken, where it was easiest to disappear. Karla noticed the late nights, the secrets, the way he collected routes the way others collected songs. She asked small questions. He gave smooth answers. She told herself love means patience. So she stayed. Their world split in two. The outside world saw the pretty couple planning a wedding, eating cake samples, and trying on clothes. The inside world was different, rules, tests, and a toolbox of tricks that did not fix anything. They broke it. When Karla said no, Paul pouted and pressed. When she tried to leave, he pulled her close with words that sounded gentle but felt like ropes. She found herself making choices to keep the peace, telling herself it was only once, only this time, only to make him happy. Each, only stacked on the last like bricks in a wall. Rumors started in town about a man on dark streets. Police compared notes. A sketch went on a bulletin board. People walked faster at night. Still, Paul kept smiling in daylight. He bought groceries. He praised a neighbor's new dog. He looked safe. Karla stood next to him like a perfect photograph. They threw a backyard cookout. They passed out lemonade. They seemed normal. Normal can be a perfect mask. And then came a night when the mask cracked wide open. A teenage girl named Leslie Mahaffey missed curfew and stood alone near her house, worried about trouble with her parents. The street was quiet, the porch light soft. Paul's car rolled past like a gray shadow and stopped. He stepped out, all gentle words and careful charm. He noticed everything. The small keys in her hand, the way she hugged her arm for warmth, the fear in her eyes. He made an offer that sounded like help. At that same time, Karla waited at home, the pretty house arranged just so. A single lamp burned. The air felt too still, as if the walls were listening. She straightened the picture frame and glanced at the clock. Outside, a car door closed with a soft thud. Leslie hesitated on the sidewalk. She looked toward her quiet street, then toward the man with the practiced smile. The world seemed to tilt. She took one step, then another. Paul led her the car and drove to the neat house with white curtains. The front door opened. The living room smelled like clean soap. Karla stood in the doorway, her face calm and unreadable. The door clicked shut behind them. The door clicked, and the quiet in the house felt too thick, like heavy air before a storm. Paul spoke softly, as if this were a friendly visit. Karla moved like a host at a party, setting a glass on a table, straightening a cushion, acting calm so everything would look normal. But nothing was normal. The living room was bright and clean, the kind of place where people should laugh and watch TV. Instead, a small video camera sat on a shelf, pointing at the sofa like an eye that never blinked. Leslie noticed the camera. Her face tightened. She asked to go home. Paul gave a smooth answer that did not help. Karla looked at the floor. For a long moment, nobody moved. The clock ticked. A car drove past outside and faded away. Somewhere in the kitchen, the refrigerator hummed. It was a low moment, a slow, terrible waiting where everyone knew the truth, but nobody said it out loud. Then the mood snapped. Paul's voice changed, hard, flat. He liked control, and now he took it. Karla stood by, unsure, caught in the space between fear and the need to please. Time turned into a blur of orders and quiet crying. No loud shouts, no broken plates. Just a cold plan carried out in a house that looked too nice for such darkness. The camera's red light glowed like a tiny warning. By morning, the sun pushed a thin line across the blinds. The house was still. Paul made coffee. Karla washed her hand for too long, as if water could rinse away choices. She felt split in two, the girl who loved pretty things and the girl who followed Paul into a place without light. She told herself it would end soon. She told herself they would move on, act normal, and no one would know. She told herself lies because they were easier to hold than the truth. Afterward, the couple went out for errands as if it were any other day. They bought milk. They smiled at a cashier. They spoke about nothing in the car, weather, dinner, weekend plans, like actors reading lines from a cheerful play. That was a low again. The strange, quiet space where evil wore a polite face and blended into traffic. But the outside world was not sleeping. A family waited for a daughter who did not come home. A phone rang and rang. Friends checked parks and bus stops. Police made a list, then made a map, then started to ask questions. Officers drove loops through neighborhoods, looking for anything that fell out of place. They did not know it yet, but their circle would keep tightening, mile by mile, around a charming young man with neat hair and a woman who smiled in photos like a magazine model. Weeks later, Paul and Karla held their wedding day. White dress, black suit, bright pictures, clapping guests. The camera flashed. They posed on a horse-drawn carriage as if they lived in a fairy tale. People cheered. Rice fell like soft rain. The pictures looked perfect, two faces lit by joy. But standing just outside the frame was a different picture. Missing posters taped to poles, a town afraid of the night, and detectives building a wall of notes that grew heavier each day. At home, the couple hung a wedding photo on the wall. Karla tried to pretend the new life was a clean page. She baked cookies. She bought fresh flowers. She told herself love could fix things if she tried hard enough. Paul kept driving late, kept watching, kept choosing dark roads and quiet corners. He spoke about plans in quick, excited whispers. Karla nodded even when her stomach knotted. She had walked too far into the tunnel to see the light behind her. Spring turned to summer. Another girl vanished, Kristen French, taken in daylight near a church parking lot after a simple trick with a map. It happened fast. A question, a pause, a car door, a street that went back to normal before anybody could blink. The town's fear rose like water in a sink, slow but certain. Police widened their search. News vans appeared. Reporters spoke into cameras with serious voices. Tips poured in, some useful, most not. Still, the picture sharpened. A neat-looking couple in a pale car, a pattern of charm, control, and silence. Inside the house, the camera sat ready, a stack of new tapes beside it. Paul checked locks and laughed softly at the evening news. Karla stood at the window, clutching the curtain, watching blue lights flash two streets over as officers searched another home. She felt the world closing in, the way sound changes before a storm breaks. That night, as wind rattled the fence, a squad car rolled slowly past their address, its spotlight sliding over the front yard. Paul froze where he stood, his smile gone, eyes flat. Karla's breath hitched. The beam of light paused on their front door, bright as noon. Then the cruiser stopped. The police car's spotlight lingered on the front door, washing the white curtains in harsh light. Karla stood still, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Paul didn't move, his jaw tight, his hands resting on the table as if ready to bolt. Then, after what felt like forever, the beam drifted away. The car rolled forward down the street and disappeared into the night. Paul laughed first. It was short and sharp, not like real laughter, more like a dare to the world. "See," he said, voice low, "they'll never catch me." Karla tried to smile, but her face didn't cooperate. The air in the room still felt electric, as if the house itself had heard everything. The next day, the sun looked too bright. The normal world went on, mail carriers, barking dogs, lawnmowers, but inside, their home felt colder. Karla cleaned the kitchen again and again, trying to scrub the air. Paul played music, loud, dancing around like nothing was wrong. But every sound made her jump. The ring of the phone, the knock of mail against the door, the hum of a passing car. Paul loved that fear. It gave him a kind of thrill, a feeling of power. He started to take more risks, driving to new towns, watching strangers, keeping notes in a small book hidden under the bed. Karla found it once and opened it. The handwriting was neat, almost careful, and full of coded words she didn't want to understand. She closed it quickly and put it back where she found it. That was one of the low times, long days of silence, broken by small, cruel words. Karla thought about leaving. She packed a small bag one morning, then unpacked it by night. Paul had a way of twisting her thoughts until they bent in his direction again. "You're with me forever," he'd say softly, like a promise, and a threat rolled into one. And each time, she stayed. But the walls were closing in. Police were piecing things together. The cars, the routes, the faces seen near where the girls vanished. A sketch went up on bulletin boards again, and this time more people recognized it. Neighbors began to whisper. Someone mentioned Paul's name. He heard about it before the police did, and it made him furious. He punched a wall so hard the frame above it cracked. Karla flinched and picked up the glass in silence. That night, Paul went for a drive. Hours later, he came home different, pale, sweaty, jittery. Karla didn't ask questions. She just watched him pace the living room, muttering about mistakes and the tapes. He looked at her like a man who suddenly realized how much she knew. The next morning, detectives knocked on their door. The first real knock. Paul opened it, smiling like always. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice smooth as glass. The officers explained it was just routine questions, part of a wider check around the neighborhood. Karla stood behind him, frozen. She felt the heat of their eyes move from his face to hers, scanning for cracks in the act. Paul handled it perfectly, friendly, confident, polite. When they left, he shut the door and laughed again. "They have nothing," he said. But he was wrong. In the days that followed, the police kept digging. The sketch matched. The cars matched. And a new voice joined the story, Karla's. The fear that had built inside her for years started to shift. She went to the hospital after a violent fight with Paul. While there, away from him, she spoke. First a few words, then the whole truth. Detectives listened in stunned silence. She told them about the van, about the girls, about the tapes hidden in the ceiling light. Each word painted a picture worse than the last. The officers didn't interrupt. They just kept writing, their pens trembling slightly on the paper. Back at the house, the police returned with a warrant. They tore through drawers, closets, and floorboards, until one officer stood on a chair, unscrewed a light cover, and found a small stack of unmarked videotapes that started the story. That discovery broke everything open. In the courtroom months later, Paul sat stone-faced. Karla took the stand, her hair neat, her voice shaking as she spoke. Reporters filled every seat, cameras flashing, pen scratching furiously on notepads. The Ken and Barbie Killers, they called them, a name so strange for something so monstrous. When the tapes finally played, the room went silent. The illusion was gone. The smiles, the perfect photos, the wedding carriage, all burned away under the weight of what was real. Outside, reporters spoke into cameras as the sky turned gray. Inside, the judge's gavel echoed once, twice, and the fairy tale life of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka ended for good. But even years later, people still ask the same question. How could something that looked so perfect hide something so evil? And maybe that's the scariest part. Because sometimes monsters don't hide in the dark. They hide in plain sight, smiling for the camera.